House or the Senate in 2018. What can we do to thwart the Maryland Republicans' plan to strive for 5? Where they're going to try to take over like 5 of our westernmost counties to be able to gain control in the Maryland state government. What can we do to help?
Well, I mean, I think it's important, even though the lightning rod right now for a lot of the energy that's out there in the country and in Maryland is what Trump and the Republicans are doing at the federal level, I think it's perfectly appropriate to focus in at the state level here in Maryland, and the local level for that matter, if you feel that the policies you see from certain people don't make sense, and direct energy in that towards that area as well. In terms of what the Republicans are looking to achieve, what you're referring to is that if they can flip a few seats in the General Assembly, then the legislature, the Democratic legislature, will no longer have the ability to override the governor's veto, and that would give the governor a much more leverage than he's had up to this point in terms of the kind of policies that come out of Annapolis. So I think it's a fair concern, and I think that if this energy can be converted into people volunteering, making phone calls, knocking on doors, and connecting to the efforts to push back on that agenda that the Republicans in Maryland are pushing forward, I think that that can be extremely helpful. By the way, I kept having these people come up to me and ask, what can we do, what can we do? And so I actually made a card that says, here's what you can do. That's pretty straightforward. So when you're done, we can hand those to you as you leave, but these are 8 things that I vetted as being consequential actions that citizens can take that I think do make a difference. Many of them you're already doing, for sure, but it includes, towards the end, to reach out and call and petition the governor. Not just your federal legislators, but the governor. And we've made the point that this governor has been much less forceful than he could have been in pushing back on Medicaid repeal that the Republicans have proposed. Maryland's a huge beneficiary of the Medicaid expansion and other things that came to us under the ACA. And the governor has kind of been cagey about that. He needs to be more forceful, and we certainly pushed on him, our delegation, to be more forceful. I think it's fair for the electorate to do the same thing.
I have a two-part question, but it's kind of together. One is, how much time do you spend, and not just you personally, but the Democrats that are in the House, talking to your colleagues across the aisle, trying to come together on something rather than letting them just go doing what they're doing? And the second part is, what I've noticed is that if you watch like MSNBC, you see only Democrats come in as the panel that they talk to. And when you look at Fox News, you see only Republicans come in. Is there any plan for the Democrats to try to get on Fox News to get the word out?
Well, Democrats are trying to get on Fox, and they do get on Fox periodically. But from time to time, Fox will choose to live in a completely alternative universe, and that gets confounded if you bring a Democrat on. So in the last couple of weeks, if you were to watch Fox, you wouldn't hear anything about what's going on with the Comey firing or the statements of the president. They've just been completely silent on that. So obviously they're the ones doing the inviting onto these shows, and they have made the decision over the last couple of weeks, we don't want any Democrats because they're going to talk about that kind of thing. Now, from time to time, things settle down, and you do get Democrats being invited on there, and occasionally Republicans being invited on kind of the MSNBCs of the world. But this goes actually to a larger issue, which is that increasingly Americans are getting information from siloed sources, and never the twain shall meet. And the problem with that is that it reinforces sort of biases that we have that make it more difficult for us to talk to each other, neighbor to neighbor, citizen to citizen. And we get in this kind of reactive mode. Social media kind of helps to push that. You know, people say to us, why don't you get along better in Washington? Now to your first question about reaching across the aisle. And I remember Steny Hoyer was asked that question, and he sort of said, well, we'll start getting along better if you all start getting along better. Because this is a representative democracy. So when we elect representatives to Washington, they're going to tend to reflect the dynamics in the country. And the more people are separating themselves out by opinion, the harder it is to get the kind of discussion across the aisle that I think can get the country to a better place. Now, it's difficult in this environment to reach out to people on the other side of the aisle because things have gotten very polarized. I think some of the moderate Republicans right now who are beginning to get nervous about President Trump, they're still worried about what's going on inside their Republican electorate and the potential that they could get challenged from the far right or from a Trump contingent if they distance themselves from the president. But my hope is that over time, they may perceive that the threat he poses politically to the Republican Party may be significant enough that it makes sense for them to start to distance themselves. And then I think we may see more opportunities for some collaboration, particularly if there's some policy proposals like infrastructure, for example, that can come down the pipe that can garner support from both sides of the aisle.
Before we ask our next question, I would like everyone to just ask one question, because there's a lot of people in this room, so we want to make sure that everyone gets their opportunity to ask a question. Any gentleman, you have a question right here?
Yeah, I'm similar to hers. It seems like when all this Affordable Care Act conversation was going on, we heard an awful lot from the Republicans about what they wanted. It didn't seem like we heard as much from the Democratic members of the House as to what you wanted to keep and what you wanted to change. So my question is kind of like hers. Is there conversation that takes place from the Congress, from the House on the Democratic side to the Republicans, making sure they clearly understand what you want to stay and what you want to change?
Well, here was the problem. For 6-7 years, the Republicans have been so committed, so dedicated to the idea of repealing the Affordable Care Act that it left very little space for us to discuss the topic of how to improve and strengthen it. Because Democrats had high anxiety that if we opened up that conversation, the Republicans would just use it as leverage to go get appeal. So what we've been saying recently is, look, if you take repeal off the table, then we'll come to the table for real discussion about where improvements can be made. Look, it's not a perfect bill. It was a major structural reform of our healthcare system. I think on balance it did very good things. But are there things we could do to make it better? Of course there are. We want to have that discussion. But you don't start that discussion by trying to pass a bill that's going to take 24 million Americans off of health care coverage, that's going to undermine these health exchanges, that's going to completely wipe away some of the most important benefits of the Affordable Care Act, including protecting people who have pre-existing conditions from not being able to get coverage, etc. So we're ready. I sit on that committee. I sit on the health subcommittee of the Energy and Commerce Committee. That's where we passed the Affordable Care Act originally. And that's where constructive discussions about how to improve and strengthen it would happen. But we can't get to that, particularly with Republicans in charge, if their priority right now is to completely undermine what we have. So I'm hoping that if we can move past the repeal, if the Senate lands in a much different place than where the House did recently, that we can have a constructive discussion. And there's some signs of hope there that in the Senate you're getting some moderate Republicans having discussions with some of the Democrats about here's what we can do to actually improve this thing, not repeal it.
We're going to go to the woman in orange.
Yes?
Hi. One of the reasons that Trump succeeded was because people wanted something different.
Yeah.
And And that's put the Democrats in a position of being the opposition party. So if in the polls coming up, we want people to vote for the Democrats, but they don't want the same old thing, how is the party planning to get an agenda out there that will convince voters
That's an
that it's
excellent-
not the same old thing?
That's an excellent question, because we're very much in the mode, which is understandable, of resistance to Trump. But that can distract you from the important work of creating an affirmative, positive narrative that's built around a set of core principles and policy priorities. And Democrats are going to need that if we're going to be successful in 2 years and certainly in 4 years. Now that is the heavy work that state parties are doing. Certainly the National Democratic National Committee is engaged in doing. Actually tomorrow morning I'll be with Tom Perez and Keith Ellison for a discussion on that very question. But it's critical because you can't just offer the public something that's against Trump. I mean, to be very honest, that was largely the message of the Clinton campaign at the end of right before the election. And Trump, ironically, was the one who was talking about the economy and getting credit for that, particularly on the part of many people in the country who are feeling a lot of economic stress right now. He combined that message with an understanding at some level that people have become really angry at Washington and politics and the establishment and the elites and so forth and so on. If you give me a baseball bat, I'll go up to Washington and I'll break furniture. What we have to do is give people enough information that they start to realize that he's breaking their furniture. He's coming after them and their livelihood and their quality of life and their health care and their jobs, et cetera, et cetera.